Hey guys, welcome back to Gunfire Reborn. It is time to talk about the mid-season update for Fortune Roll. It is a couple weeks past the launch of it. Sorry, life has gotten in the way. Since the mid-season came out, I've gotten a dog. He's cute. He's a handful. His name's Charming. Look at him. A bunch of stuff happened at Christmas. It's been a mess. I'm here now to tell you about my feelings, and we're going to talk about one, Yoyo, the changes they made to her, to some of the different things they've added into the game with the mid-season update that I want to touch on, and then of course all of the new seasonal stuff that they added in as well. Then we'll wrap this up by talking about my final feelings on the season, because this will probably be the last video I make on Fortune's Roll. First off, let's talk about the changes with Yoyo. If you remember back when I did the DLC character update, I mentioned the New Dawn glitch and I showed how that worked. I call it a glitch because they definitely adjusted it, but I really don't like how they changed this. If you have the Starfly and the Starfly reaches max on it and then you use its like special ability, it will consume the weapon resource bar and you will start getting stacks of New Dawn. Once you reach 60 stacks, you'll then get 100% of your bar for like a second or two. So for the Starfly, that means it basically extends the amount of time that it will be able to shoot. But for something like the Tempest, where you get the lock on an explosion, you'll get like a second or two where you can spam it. So maybe get like 2, maybe 3 shots off before it runs out. And then as you level this up, it's easier to extend that period of time and you get build up towards it faster. The reason I don't like this is that it is much harder to efficiently use. The last one, it was way overpowered. It definitely needed to be fixed, but at least you could build stacks up and then use them as you needed them. But with this one, having to hit 60 stacks, 60 is a lot. When you're getting these by using weapon skills and by using the resources, it is hard to efficiently time when you'll hit that 60 stack. And so what you'll end up doing is noticing there's only a couple of enemies left in the room, so you don't want to use the weapon skill in order to kill them off. So you just like pick at them with something else and then wait until you start the next room and then you go into it and blow everything up. I don't like this. I feel like they super nerfed it. It still basically does what it's supposed to do. It's still the theme of what it is, but I just don't like it nearly as much. It's harder to play into. Outside of that, energy recall, I think this is just straight up better. Before, it was when a weapon skill resource was used, you get the bonus lucky shot, and for the next weapon skill, you get an extra hit. They basically just reworded this to make it more sensible. You just get more lucky shot and chance to deal an extra hit per weapon skill resource max. You have every reason in the world to just get as big of a weapon skill resource bar as you can. You're probably just going to take whatever it is that you want as your main weapon and then combine that with the Tempest, because I think the Tempest has a 40 resource cap, which is the most in the game. And so if you put that on there with the Gemini, you'll be doing fine. And then for the natural shield, I think this is a fantastic change. Originally, once you got this, the little barrier she puts down would block a certain amount of damage before it would break. Now it is a number of uses. So if there's like a 10 million damage hit, it takes off 1 use. Before, if you were in the higher levels of difficulty, that would break almost instantly. By having this be a number of uses instead of an amount of damage, it's more consistent from difficulty to difficulty. Clearly, at the higher levels, you're gonna have more guys shooting more often and stuff, so it still will go down faster, but not nearly as much. It is just way more consistent. I feel like Yoyo is still a fantastic character. I don't think this really messed her up. It took something that was obviously way overpowered and needed to be fixed, but then I feel like they nerfed it into the ground and it's really not that easy to build around anymore. But everything else about her kit is fantastic. As for the other stuff that they added in this update, they added in the platforming challenge for the geysers, which is incredible. It's a lot of fun. I feel like they need to add in way more platforming challenges. Act 1 only has the boulders. Act 3 has the very tight dash platform one, and now also this. Act 2 has like 5 platforming challenges. Act 2 has the one where you have to jump around walls, the one with the fire spouts and green orbs in it. It also has a boulder one similar to the Act 1 platforming challenge. And with the alternate route, you end up with the zipline challenge too. I don't know why Act 2 has so many platforming challenges and the other ones don't, but I'm really hoping they add in a couple more of those. They said they were adding in like another defense vault similar to the cube. I have played at least a dozen or more runs of this game, and I have not seen that yet. I did fight an elite in what I think that room is, so it's probably a dual purpose vault. Outside of that, they also added in alternate routes here, and I think the alternate routes are great. There's like a wave room where you're in a canyon with a bunch of the rafters up. It kind of feels like an area ripped right out of Borderlands, and considering I usually sell this game as, hey, it's kind of like roguelike Borderlands with the looter shooter aspects and upgrading your character, it kind of just feels right at home, and I really love it whenever I get that level. Personally, I think they did a fantastic job with the new routes, the new vault, the new platforming challenge, and I eagerly await what they're going to be doing with the next one, because they said the next thing they're going to be doing is an alternate Act 1, so I'm assuming there's going to be a new movement ability there, similar to how the alternate Act 2 has the zip lines, alternate Act 3 has the geysers. And if you had to ask me what I'm hoping for, I want it to be like boosters. I want there to be like this, we're talking about the tight corridors of the tombs and stuff. They've been leaning into verticality. If they did more verticality, I'd love that. But what I'm thinking is like, you know, airport terminals, how they have like the fast moving belts that you can stand on. I want to see stuff like that. All right, I've talked about that stuff enough. Now let's talk about the new dice and new fortune cards, but we're going to jump into the game to talk about that. So first things first, let's talk about the new fortune cards on here. There are 2 incredible ones down here that it's kind of hard to peel myself away from, and it is the twin passive and the twin active cards. So if you've ever wanted to have 2 actives on at the same time, you can have the twin active card on now and do some pretty silly stuff on here. I still feel like Refine is one of the best cards in the game, just because whenever you get close to the max roll, it could be the thing that just bumps it a little bit up. Seems more consistent than a complete reroll or some of these other ones. But I feel like this in combination with this new one called Anchor can get pretty crazy. So what does Anchor do? It says record the last dice value rolled without Anchor. And then when you use it, your next roll will be greater than the recorded value minus 3. So when I originally read that, I thought that meant that whatever it is, it was going to get the roll and then subtract 3. No. It is the range of what you rolled minus 3. So if you roll a 10 and then you anchor it, your next roll will be anywhere from a 7 and above. This means that if you're just like walking around, especially in like Act 3, Act 4, picking up dice and rolling them, and you roll a 17 or 18, you can then anchor that, and then your next die will guarantee roll a 14, 15, or above, which then means you're in like proper refine range on this. It makes it very easy to get the reds. The problem is that you have to be a little bit lucky in that you will want to randomly roll another die at that level or something close to it. Obviously, you don't need it to be at the max roll to anchor it in. You can still have something pretty high up there and then want to use your anchor on it. Now, anchor is a 72 charge. It is mighty expensive compared to, say, the refine, convert, and all of that stuff. So it is a little bit more pricey, but in my experience, anchor has been pretty good whenever I do the twin active with refine, because that little minus 3 gets made up for by refines doing a +1 to 4. Now, outside of that, I still feel like the best combo in the game right now is a refine third count. after playing so many runs, I feel like as long as you're not grabbing the spiritual blessing for lucky number that allows you to reroll things, then you might not want to get refine and take something else, because you're going to end up lucky rolling on a lot of stuff, and maybe you'll want to just get more rerolls or something along those lines. I did see a post today in the subreddit of someone saying that the twin passive of third count and data black hole with lucky number apparently can cause even better dice explosions when data black hole doesn't happen to hit that multiple of 3 on there. So that might be something you want to look into with your game. I don't often end up playing a start with lucky number because I'm usually testing out other things with character abilities and whatnot, but the math makes sense to me, so that might be a legitimate use for data black hole now that we can have twin passive third count with it. As long as you don't get unlucky and hit a multiple 3 on there, cool. However, you'll notice that we do have 2 new passives down here, and they work really well together. So let's look at store membership. It says Fortune Merchant's item refreshes have no limit, and the number of dice for sale increases to 8. So whenever you go into the level, you're going to have 8 dice to buy from, which massively makes it easier to get dice at a high level of a roll, if not maxed out. And when you re-roll them, you'll notice it says the cost for the initial refresh is free, but every 3 refreshes plus 1, press N, where N is equal to the current act. So in Act 1, when you're first rolling these, you'll get 3 free rerolls, and then after that it'll cost 1, and then after that it'll cost 2. But then when you go to Act 2, it immediately jumps up to 2. And then when you're in Act 3, it immediately jumps up to 3. So, with this, you can get way better shops for your dice, and I think this one's pretty good. Obviously, if you're going to be doing something like the lucky number setup, you're going to get way more rolls more often and you'll have more shards. So that could be a lot easier for to use. And if you have refines or rerolls on, then you could buy the... And if you have refine, then you could buy a die from the shop that's close to maxed out and then just bump it up instead of trying to roll one out. The other one down here is quick active. It says unlock a dice slot in advance. Gain extra 15 initial fortune gem. Fortune Merchant in the boss stage will sell a legendary dice choice pack. So basically, you get to have an extra slot early. However, in the late game, you're not going to have an extra slot there. You just basically unlock one ahead of time. But the other more important things here is that you get an extra set of gems to get started, and you get to have legendary dice way earlier. Again, if you're doing like a lucky number situation, you would probably still be getting those legendary dice fast. But I think taking twin passive and getting both of these together is pretty great, because not only do you get the extra amount of gems, but then you also have, and the extra slot, but then you get a much better shop situation to get yourself settled before going into the game. Taking these two together makes it very consistent. It's a nice run. You don't have to take a lucky number. You can get the spiritual blessing for your character or something like that and still have a pretty strong dice start. Now, the last new thing on here is extra slot. Extra slot says gain 1 extra initial slot and chance to roll max dice value greatly reduced. In my experience, that greatly reduced is very true. It is hard to get those gold on the rare dice and reds on the legendary dice. What mitigated some of that was playing in multiplayer, where when I would get dice off the ground, I could hand it off to somebody else, let them roll it, and then if it was a good roll, give it back to me. So if you're playing in multiplayer, you can sort of work around this, but it doesn't mean that you will never get that max value. It just doesn't hit that often. So once again, I find myself taking Refine with it because you can get close and then bump it up, or you could just outright buy one from the shop. The shop dice don't seem to be affected by this. I think it's only dice that you specifically roll for yourself in your inventory. The ones in the shop don't seem to be affected by that. So whenever I see one in the shop, refining seems to be the good choice for that. You still want to roll some dice so that you can get the shards and you can start building up charges for this. But if you see a die that you want and you're playing in multiplayer, hand it over to your friend, have them roll it, and then give it back to you because you might have better odds that way. Outside of that, I'm not aware of any other like super impressive setups here. I'm sure you could come up with something. I massively appreciate the addition of the twin card passive and twin card active. I think it's going to make for some really interesting stuff that a lot of you can figure out. But for me, the best things I have found is the active Refine and Anchor and the passive store membership and quick activate. I think those are great. We do have this little custom thing here for just setting up pings for yourself. This doesn't really affect anything mechanically. This is just visual. So for example, if you wanted a preset template and you said you want a weapon loadout, all this is doing is putting little pings on here to remind yourself that you're looking for that. But I already was doing that on this, and I like the way they had that set up before, where over here I could just click on the die that I wanted to get a ping for and set up my pings for it, but whatever. Basically, if you're doing a skill run, you could click this, hit use, and then whatever is up here, let's say go into skill, and I wanted Spirit Surge on here, which, by the way, Spirit Surge? Let me just come down here and Spirit Surge. That's right, there's 2 Spirit Surges, so be careful when rolling these die. I had a run where I was trying to use this one for the primary, and I didn't realize I had been rolling on the secondary one, and I wasted a bunch of resources doing that rolling. So I'm sure that's a translation thing or something like that, but there are 2 Spirit Surges, so be mindful. All right, with that, there are some new ones on here. I'm going to consult this for the new dice and talk about them. Heavy Bomb, what this does is that when you manually use your secondary skill, which means anything that you have that auto fires it, whether that be a dice or an ascension, does not apply to this. It will add some amount of extra cooldown, but it will add extra final damage to your secondary skill. So if this is something where you're not like super hard spamming it, then you can get a bit of extra damage on here. I don't feel like this is incredible, and I'm gonna end up saying this a lot, so get used to me saying this, but skill boost is incredible. The amount of damage that you get off of skill boost is really, really good, and I feel like most other die in the pack here just doesn't come close to the utility that skill boost provides. Now, the game is about managing multipliers, and so if you want to know why you would want to take something like Heavy Bomb, it's because this is the multiplier for skill damage. On top of that, you would have a multiplier for secondary skill damage. So you want to have a lot of different multipliers so that you can get as big of an output of damage as possible. At a certain point, instead of just stacking up another ×1 on something, if you're at ×4 and you go to ×5, it might be better to get a ×1 to a ×2 on something else. I could break down the math on all that, but I think if you've been playing this game long enough that you get any value out of these videos, you kind of know what I'm saying here. So, with Heavy Bomb, this damage isn't incredible, and to me, I wouldn't want to have this reduction in my ability to spam secondary skills for the output of 40% extra final damage to my secondary skill. Where I actually care about Heavy Bomb is only on the red here, where it says it also gives a 60% range to the secondary skill. So for any of the ones that are targeted, like Laylo's Chain Lightning or the Owl's cards, you can hit things at a further range, which honestly, it's not like that super necessary. But for all of the characters that have like grenade style things that explode on impact, it increases that explosion radius. So it doesn't say that specifically, but I did a test with the Atomic Dog build where I wanted to use this specifically, and it appeared to make that explosion bigger. So if you're planning on something like that where you want to have big booms, this could be the final part of that build for you. Otherwise, I think there's some better things you could do for secondary damage, especially if you're doing lots of secondaries. Celestial Broken remains to be one of the best ones, in my opinion. You get 40% secondary skill damage for 5 seconds per secondary skill use. That is already so much better than Heavy Bomb. So I would look into something like that over Heavy Bomb when pressed. Spirit Restore, I don't feel is very useful. It says restore 55% of secondary skill capacity every 5 seconds. Fixed cost of 6 charges per use. So you will use more secondary skills when you use them, but you recover a percentage of your amount each time. Personally, I don't know where I'm supposed to use Spirit Restore. If I come up here and go to Restore Spirit, which again, love those names. We have Spirit Restore and Restore Spirit. But with Restore Spirit, you get a use back for every 8 enemies hit, but it also increases your number of secondary skill uses on top of that, which is super useful. Like maybe if you're spamming a whole lot and you didn't take Endless Assault, this could be better, but I feel like Restore Spirit does the same thing, but better. So maybe your mileage will vary. Maybe you found a build that specifically leans into it better than what I'm thinking. But the fact that this uses so many charges makes me not like it. Autocast. Autocast is a lot of fun. This one says, during battle, trigger secondary skill effect to enemy in front every so many seconds, dealing extra final damage. And when charges are below 50%, trigger an extra effect. Or more, depending on what tier you're on. This one's just great. If you're doing secondary spam or even just a primary skill run, just turn this thing on and it'll shoot it out. Now, keep in mind, it doesn't actually physically shoot the thing that is your secondary. It shoots out like a little homing glowy arrow thing, and when it hits, it acts as your secondary skill. So for Laylo's Chain Lightning, you won't see a lightning bolt shoot out of you. You'll see like a little arrow of light shoot out of you, hit an enemy, and then once it hits the enemy, then it zaps around and does the Chain Lightning. So all of the effects of your secondary will trigger off of it, but it's not precisely that. So visually, that's what you're going to be looking for. But this is just, it's free damage. It's free real estate. But I like it. It's fun. If you're already doing a spamming build, throw it on there. I do think that you would probably be better off in the early game just taking the skill boost for the extra damage. If there is something that you're doing, if you're doing a build where you need to put out a whole lot of secondaries, it could be better to take the auto cast over the skill boost. But again, the raw damage you get from skill boost is hard to contend with. This seems more like a late game, like an Act 3, Act 4 thing you put on there to really maximize the amount of things getting hit. But before then, I think you would really want to up the level of damage or the consistency on recovering those secondary uses more than having this one auto fire. But that doesn't mean you can't do it. It is very fun. Enjoy that. Have fun with that. In the similar vein, we have Chain Strike. Defeating an enemy with secondary skill deals 45% of the final damage as true damage to the closest enemy. This true damage can chain again if it defeats its target with a max of 3 chains. So what you're looking at is if you kill an enemy with your secondary, it will deal roughly half, and it gets better as it goes up there, to the closest enemy, and if it kills them, it chains again, and if it kills them, it chains again. You need to have enough secondary skill damage that it can kill multiple things, or you need to have a secondary skill that is so big, like it has a big explosion, that it can kill one thing and do damage to a lot of things around it. And then when that damage transfers, it finishes them off, and then transfers and finishes them off and stuff. What I found is if you have like really good single target damage, it chains well. If you have really good big AoE damage, it chains well. But if you don't have one or the other on those, then it has a hard time of really popping off, you know? Because you'll maybe like do a couple hits of your secondary to work something down, and then when you land the kill shot with it, well, if it took 2 or 3 shots to kill one thing, then losing half of that damage and having it hit the thing closest to it, it's definitely not going to one-shot that. Spirit Bloom. This one goes with the spamming secondary skill fantastically. It says, after hitting enemies 3 times the secondary skill, spawn a lotus. The lotus blooms after a half second, dealing some amount of the last secondary skill's damage as true damage to enemies within a 3-meter radius, and it can bloom again if it deals damage up to 4 more times. When you do your secondary skill and you hit 3 times with it, it'll put this little lotus on the ground. Very small, but when it blooms, it's so pretty. This game has a problem with visual clarity at the higher difficulties, and this one doesn't help with it, but it's a very pretty, like, neon blue flower that pops up, and it covers a pretty good distance. And what this means is if that bloom hits anything and deals damage, it will bloom again and deal damage. And if it does, it'll bloom again and do that 4 times. If it ever blooms and doesn't hit anything, then it ends the chain. It's fantastic, especially for things that multi-hit. If you have the Prince's Grenade, since that puts out like a constant AoE around it, that'll hit multiple times. Lalo's Chain Lightning hits multiple times. At the end of the day, it's more damage, it covers a large area, it looks really cool, so it's hard to say no to it. We have Brave Assault. Taunt enemies within a certain range every 1.5 seconds when dashing. For each taunted enemy, HP cap is increased by a percentage for 3 seconds. Now, when you first get this one at the normal level, it's not per enemy. It is just if you taunt anything, you get a bonus. So I've seen some people get confused why this goes from 30% to 10%. If you read, it says, just when taunt is successful on the early ones, and for the later one it says for each taunted enemy. On top of that, it doesn't seem like you get to stack it on enemies that are already taunted. If you taunt an enemy and then dash by them again, it doesn't like restack the taunt and give you an extra amount of HP cap. This is only for each new enemy taunted, or if a taunt falls off the enemy and then you reapply it. That seems to give you the stacks. But, man, it seems to help out a lot. When you dive into the middle of a bunch of enemies with your dash, you get so much HP out of this. And this plays perfectly into the Blood Valor Vitality Master style build, where you're just trying to HP stack to get as much damage as possible. Brave Assault is now a must-have for that kind of build because it just helps out so much. Granted, it only lasts for 3 seconds, so it's not incredibly long, but it is enough for you to dash in, do one big hit with your Blood Valor bonus, and everything dies. Next up is Bomber. Bomber says when casting your primary skill, you'll summon 1 Bomber, and their base HP is a certain amount plus your Ascension level times a certain amount. The Bomber approaches the nearest enemy and self-destructs, dealing a bunch of damage. The Bomber approaches the nearest enemy and self-destructs, dealing fire damage, and the target takes 20% damage and minus movement speed for a few seconds, max 1 Bomber at a time. So first off, there's some things that are already messed up about this. In my testing, this max 1 Bomber at a time is a lie. I've definitely had more than one bomber out at a time without going to red. When you get this one to red, it says you can have, or when it gets to gold, it says 2, and when you get to red, it says 3. But I know even early on with the normal level one, where it says max level 1, I've had more than one out. So something's a little fudgy about that, but regardless, it is fire damage. So it plays into elemental damage really well. If you're doing an elemental run and you want to do primary stuff, this could be really fun with it. If you're doing a summoning run with Yo-Yo, you're already doing corrosion, you might as well throw the fire in there too and do some combust, as well as getting all of your multipliers for that. So it works really well with that too. And there's no like cooldown on this. Yes, there is a max number, but as I said, I've already seen the max lie to me. So I think you could just, as long as you could spam out your primary, you're doing well. Now, the character that I think abuses this the best is Lee, the Firefox, because one, it does fire damage, so it plays into that really well. She gets resources back for dealing fire damage, and these help with that, so it's a way for her to keep her resources high. In addition to that, she can start charging her Kamehameha Blast, and that will spawn a bomber, but you don't have to shoot it, you can cancel it. So you can start the charge, cancel it, and summon a bomber. Start the charge, cancel it, and you can just spam that and send out bombers. Instead of you shooting your fireball, you're shooting out bombers all over the place. Very fun. Try that one out for yourself and have a great time. Outside of that though, it's fun. It's a way for a non-summon character to get to partake in the summon build. I wouldn't say that like this being your only summon and doing heavy into the summoning stuff is the best choice, but the fact that it plays off of element and dice damage means that there's a lot of ways to multiply it, and you can have a lot of fun with this as like the main crux of your build. Just try to play it with a character that has a decent cooldown on their primary skill, or else you're going to be standing around picking your nose waiting for it to come off cooldown. Death Whisper. This one is also for the summon build. It says, gain 1 stack when a summon vanishes, up to so many stacks. Each stack gains movement speed and final damage 2 summons for 8 seconds. Basically, if you have a lot of summons that are appearing and then dying, then you get extra summon damage. So obviously for the bomber build, you want to have some amount of primary spam that's faster than 8 seconds. Otherwise, you're not really going to get a benefit out of this. But for Yo-Yo, it is fantastic. Death Whisper will pop off constantly, and, you know, throw the bomber on there too. Get the bomber going out every time you put down a new little forest spirit buddy, and you're going to be doing so much damage with this. It doesn't even take that long to get the stack starting to build up. You just throw these out there left and right, and they'll just take care of everything for you. Massive amount of summon damage. Problem is that if you're not doing any summon damage, it doesn't do anything for you, so you wouldn't want to worry about that at all. But for what it's worth, for Yo-Yo, it's almost a must-have if you're doing a primary focused run. Spirit Bind. Summon attacks have a chance to trigger 1 use of secondary skill. This one is way more niche, because for any of the characters, both Nona and Yo-Yo, who have built-in summons, those activate on your primary. So if you're trying to do a primary based run, you don't usually care that much about having your secondary trigger off. And if you're doing a secondary focused run, you're probably not too concerned with focusing on your primary. But if you're doing just a general skill damage run and you're okay with mixing and matching between the two, however, I feel like if that's the route you're going, you might as well just do auto cast instead, because I feel like this would be more consistent in just getting off secondary uses, and you wouldn't have to worry about your summon needing to land attacks. But at the red level, the summon attacks trigger 1 use of secondary skill like every single time. Can get a bit out of hand when it's Yo-Yo. Yo-Yo, if you're doing a parasite build and you get to act 3 or 4 and you're looking for that final thing to slot in, you could probably do a Spirit Bind and get a lot of use out of it, just because even though you don't really care to put down a lot of spirits, if you have the Ascension that automatically places them down for you, then that kind of takes care of it, and then the next thing you know, you'll just have extra parasite hitting everything around you. So kind of niche, not a very frequent thing to show up that I care about, but for what it's worth, when you are trying to do a run with secondary skills for Nona or Yoyo, then this can go really heavy for you. For any other character, I don't think it helps to like go take Bomber and then put this on. You would get way more out of having like auto cast on here than trying to use 2 dice slots to get the most out of that. But, you know, you don't always have to be efficient. You can do things for fun. That's allowed. Mega Summon. Summon HP cap is increased, and for every increased HP cap, summon size, attack power, attack range, and attack speed is increased, and the size can increase up to 100%. This one is terribly funny with Iron Wing because he gets monstrously big. Obviously doing with Yoyo is also fun too, just because the boys get bigger. But if you're doing a summon run, this is a must-have. You should always take this because it not only increases their life, but it's also their attack power and attack range and attack speed. Yes, they get bigger, so hypothetically they'll take more hits and stuff, but whatever. Ultimately, if you're doing a summon build, Mega Summon is necessary. There's no reason not to take it. It's super strong, and it looks funny. That it's like everything you would want out of a die for this purpose. So take that every time. Otherwise, obviously, if you're not doing summons, it doesn't do anything for you. Level boost. Gain 1 stack on defeating or assisting to defeat an enemy. Each stack grants extra temporary levels to the main weapon and up to +10 extra levels. Lose 1 stack when taking damage. Just really nice for getting extra levels on here. Personally, the only time I really care about weapon levels is when I'm doing a monkey run, where I specifically take the spiritual blessing that gives you lucky shot per weapon level. If you do a run like this in the current season, it can be terribly fun. There's so many ways to bump weapon levels. We're going to get into another one here in a little bit. Pretty straightforward one. So what is Spirit Surge 2 Electric Boogaloo? Well, this one deals with primary skill damage. The one before this Spirit Surge is a secondary skill one, so please be careful about that. But Spirit Surge says, extra primary skill damage. After casting the primary skill so many times, the effect changes to a reduction in cooldown, and it resets at the stage switch. So what this basically means is at the start of each stage, you're going to have a lot more damage on your primary skill, but after you use it a few times, you'll end up being able to cast it more often. What I find this to be useful for is for boss killing. If I've gotten to the end of Act 3 or Act 4 and I have my full dice loadout, then what I'll do is get a Spirit Surge in reserve and leave it down below my dice. And then if I ever go into a vault, if I ever have an elite invasion, or if I'm about to go into a boss, I'll swap out one of my other die for Spirit Surge so that I get that 400% if I'm at the red, obviously, for my primary skill damage, and then use my primary however many times to kill the boss. And then when I'm done, swap that back out. It's a nice little backup thing for if you want to have the single target damage. Generally, I feel like having the cooldown reduction doesn't matter as much because there's better ways to do that, but I cannot deny that getting this up to red and having 400% extra primary skill damage for your first 10 casts is ridiculously strong. Even the gold one here at a 200% is very strong, because if you throw this on top of a skill boost, it's so much damage. It's a lot of damage. The problem is that it's limited on uses, and then after that it becomes a cooldown. There might be some builds where you want to have that cooldown reduction, but I personally feel like the damage is more important. If I cared about cooldown, then I would probably just get a cooldown die. But I would suggest you use it that way. Maybe you can find a better use, but for me, just leaving it in my pocket and using it when I run into a big chunky boy to help melt them down, way better. Polymorph magic. You have a chance to transform an enemy into Dragon Kian for 8 seconds when dealing skill damage. Elites and bosses are immune. The fact that elites and bosses are immune is a little bit sad, and also when they transform into Dragon Kian and you kill them, it doesn't like drop a bunch of scrolls and stuff like it does in the little vault event thing. So for this, there's probably some good uses for it. Obviously, it's funny. It's very silly to turn enemies into little dragons. They become yellow diamonds on the mini-map, so it's kind of easy to follow along with them. It's just novel. I haven't really found a good use for it yet. Perhaps there's one out there, but for the moment, it just seems like it turns a few enemies into something harmless. But normal enemies usually aren't the problem that I have. Put this on a scroll and put it into the base game. I think that would go hard. I think it'd be very funny to have the ability to polymorph enemies into harmless creatures. Strength Taker. Select and seal an acquired ascension to make it ineffective. For each sealed ascension level, increase final weapon damage, total max HP, and damage resistance. Now, the way this is worded, you would think you only do this to one. It says seal and acquired ascension, but it's not true. You can seal as many as you want. And as it says, for each level, you get a bonus on that. If you have 3 pips of an ascension done and you seal that one, you'll get 3 stacks of this. If you're at the end of a run and you've got like 14 ascension levels, you can literally seal all of them away and get 14 stacks of this. Now, if you're doing a Vitality Master Blood Valor stacking HP build, this can go pretty hard on it. The only problem is that you're also getting damage resistance, and the way that Blood Valor, or the way that Vitality Mastery works, is that you're not going to get as much out of your increases because you get extra HP per negative resistance. So this will eat into your negative resistance and reduce some of the percentage increase of your vitality max bonus. But that said, you still are getting a bigger amount from your total max HP per sealing on this. Obviously, losing your ascensions can be very scary. Almost every character with every build, you're doing something with some amount of your ascensions. You're trying to play around, for example, as Momo, and you're doing a weapon skill run, and you get a bunch of ascensions that don't deal with the weapon skill at all. Well, then you can take Strength Taker, eliminate all the ones that you weren't using, and still get some benefit out of them. It's a nice little way to adjust your run to give you something of a benefit where you couldn't before. The last 3 here are kind of in a set because they behave the same way. So I'm just going to try to knock all of these out all at once. With Spirit Conversion, it says it increases the cooldown of actively using your secondary skill by 3 seconds. The wielded weapon's crit X plus the secondary skill capacity times a certain amount, with attacks having a capacity +1. So basically, the more secondary skills you have, the better the crit X of the weapon you're holding will be. And you get a bonus chance to trigger critical hits on top of that. Bonuses granted by the Foundry are doubled. Moving on. Awakened Foundry. Foundry weapon level equals the main plus offhand weapon level times 2, plus lucky shot chance per Foundry level, accuracy and stability increase as well. Then, in the later versions of it, it also gives the Foundry an exclusive inscription, and then at red, 2 exclusive inscriptions. So basically, this pumps up your Foundry based off of the combined weapon level of your main and offhand times 2. Normally, your Foundry is equal to the lower level between your 2 guns. So this massively increases Foundry level. And then last, we have Weapon Mastery. +1 stack every 8 seconds without using your primary skill, up to so many stacks. Increase weapon damage per stack, -1 stack when using your primary skill, and Foundry bonuses are doubled. So you'll notice all 3 of these say that the Foundry gets double the bonus out of them. This is what I used for one of the most incredible runs I had this season as the monkey, using his blessing for extra lucky shot on weapon levels. I went super hard on a Foundry only run, and it ended up being one of the most busted runs I did this season. I would highly recommend you try this out. First of all, getting your secondary skills up to give you extra crit X on it, that's not hard to come by. Coming over here, pumping up your weapon levels, well, the monkey gets a whole bunch of temporary weapon levels on stuff too, and that applied to this, and that made it pop off even harder. And then you get even more lucky shot. You get these exclusive inscriptions on your Foundry, and it caused a funny little quirk. For anyone who's played as the monkey, you know that he has one ascension that says that while you have key, you get an extra inscription on a gun. And the higher you level that ascension, the better it is. That the first one is a green, then a blue, and then an exclusive inscription. I ended up with a Foundry at the end that had 3 exclusive inscriptions on it. 2 from this and 1 from the monkey. And 2 of those were the +1 projectiles plus 100% consumption. So I was triple shotting with the Foundry every shot. And I also had the kill 5 enemies in a short amount of time, and it auto hits enemies. It was disgusting. It was so much damage between all of the extra levels, all of the extra damage, all of the lucky shot. Oh my gosh, it was incredible. If you're not doing a Foundry run, I don't know how much these actually matter to you. I'm sure getting some extra crit X would be nice, but if you're doing this, why not just take the crit hit one and you get even better crit scaling and stuff. That way you don't have to focus on your secondary skill max getting bigger, but regardless, I'm sure there's a lot of ways to pump these up, but I would highly recommend some point this season taking the monkey. What even is that blessing? Let me make sure you know what blessing it is. Primordial Unity, 5% lucky shot chance per main weapon level. So basically, you just get so much lucky shot per weapon level, and it's disgusting. To finish off this video, I'm just going to talk about some of the things that I have found throughout this season that are either fun or strong in ways that kind of define this season for me. And I think the first one that I have to talk about is Extended Magazine. For those of you that watched or heard about my Thanks Gunning event, it was marred by one big problem, and that was ammo management. Trying to play through the game using only one gun on the hardest difficulty at 4-player level ended up with me running into a lot of enemies, and they were mighty tanky, so I ran out of ammo a lot, and I would often find myself leaning on Extended Magazine's ability to replenish my ammo to keep that going. But because I ended up leaning on that crutch, I also found a lot of other things about this that are interesting. For one, if you go with First Strike, the spiritual blessing that gives you more damage the higher your magazine is, or how many bullets are left in the magazine, this can go incredibly hard because Extended Magazine will keep your magazine full. It does not only increase your magazine, but at the higher levels of the die, it will replenish the magazine for you, keeping you at the max level. It is not hard to get the Share Magazine Gemini with even things that have a tiny magazine and then giving it a big hippo or something like that, and getting a massive First Strike bonus for weapons that you otherwise wouldn't want to do that with. Very fun, very consistent too. An easy way to get a lot of weapon damage real early on, so it is hard to say no to Extended Magazine if you're doing a weapon damage run. It just pairs so well for so many reasons. Hey, Editor Yodi here. I completely forgot there was something I was going to mention about this, and it kind of applies to all dice, but specifically the extended magazine's the one I noticed this the most on. There's like some sort of bug that messes up your count for the magazine whenever you swap from the rare die to legendary die. This happened to me on so many runs during the Thanksgiving marathon that I was losing my mind, because I would like finish the Act 2 boss fight with a magazine of like 500 something, then swap the dice I had out for legendary dice of extended magazine, and then when I left the shop, my max magazine would be like 300 something. Even though it should be higher, it was showing lower. The way I fixed it specifically with this was to just drop my weapons and pick them back up again, and that seemed to solve the problem. But sometimes even then I would go to the next stage and then the problem would happen again and I'd have to drop them and pick them back up. This probably also happened a couple times with the Vitality Master, with the HP stacking, and a couple of other things. So I don't know what's going on with the code to cause that, but just keep your eyes open and make sure you're not getting ripped off with your upgrades. Okay, back to the video. Burst Shot, just like with the Talisman League, was very fun. The biggest problem that I have with this is that charged weapons can't be used with it, and I think that's a real shame because there's a lot of guns that it would have been fun with, but because they're charged weapons, they aren't allowed to, and that kind of sucks. Obviously, a melee weapon wouldn't really work too well with it. It says no ejectors or staves. I feel like staves could have worked well with it, but I get why no to ejectors, but I feel like they should let you do it anyway, just because as soon as you put it on there, you would realize how bad it is for it. But Burst Shot was very fun. There were so many fun guns to do Burst Shot with. It was just like the Wild Talisman. I'm here for it every time. There were so many times where I wanted to use Pinpoint Blast, but the fact that you need to have a crit X of higher than 6 is pretty prohibitive to most builds being able to use it. Because if you are doing something where you want to have high crit, you're basically going to have to do the Share Gemini, or you're going to have to also include other dice to increase that crit in order to get them up. If you're doing an explosion-based run and you wanted to get this on-crit thing, you could take like Counter Violence, get the crit die, and then put Pinpoint Blast on, and then basically you get multi-explosions every time this way. But it feels like a lot of work. It takes a lot of squeeze to get the juice out of that one. But for what it's worth, if you do like a lay low gradual improvement run, this one's an easy pickup for that, because then you get to have explosions on it. Or anytime that you do want to do the combined crit for anyone else, this can work out fine. I just feel like this ×6, I would have rather them make it something like the explosion radius scales based off of your crit X, so you could use it on low crit weapons to give them an explosion radius on crit, but to really lean into it, you would have to get the crit. Instead of prohibiting it, make it scale off of it is what I would have done. But otherwise, it's still fun. It's still cool for what it's worth. I feel like I'm going to combine a couple of these into my opinions on this. The Lucky Shot die, the Firearm die, and the Skill Boost die are just way too good at what they do. They're way too good at what they do. It is hard to beat the efficiency on them. For one, each of them can be equipable too. You can have 2 Lucky Shot dies, 2 Firearm dies, 2 Skill Boost dies. The fact that you can have those stacked up, it makes it really hard to not take them, because they're so efficient at what they do. They don't have a fun little quirk where it's like, you gotta do this to trigger this thing, or on Tuesday, under a blood moon, you get to have extra criticals whenever you face the western direction and repeat the chant of the Necronomicon. Like, you don't have all of the interesting stuff there. It's just raw, hey, you want some Lucky Shot? Here's a bunch of Lucky Shot, kid. And then you can get even more if you lean into this. But firepower? Here, have some more weapon damage. Skill boost? have some more skill damage. Occasionally, you'll get even more. I wish they wouldn't have been so strong to better justify other things, or just had more interesting trade-offs on them. Charge Strike was a very interesting one as well. It's one where if you shoot a weapon so many times, you'll automatically shoot a bonus projectile out that has extra lucky shot on it. If you're using a normal ammo gun, it's gonna take more shots than a large, which will take more shots than a special. This one can go pretty hard on a burst shot with a special weapon gun, because every time you pull the trigger, you'll probably be getting that extra projectile on top of that. So that can be very fun. Just getting the extra projectile out there for free on every trigger pull is cool. Outside of that, whenever you're doing something like, let's say, a radioactive gauntlet spore build, this one can be helpful for that, because even though you're hitting something right in front of you, that extra projectile could hit something that you're not targeted on, but getting close to you. For example, if you're holding on an arsonist in front of you, and then a coyote comes up from the side, this extra charge strike projectile can take care of that for you. So I like this. It's pretty fun, but it's not like something I would build a whole run around. The whole season, I was looking for a way to make Bloodshot work, and even though I did a couple runs where it functioned, it ran into the problem I was mentioning with the Lucky Shot and Firearm, which is for the amount of squeeze I have to do for this to get the damage bonus out of it, I feel like there's much better ways to get around it. Having to sacrifice a big chunk of your HP for some weapon damage, I mean, just take this into consideration. Let's say you have 100 HP. This gets to 3 stacks. Then on the gold level here, you're going to get a 75% HP loss. You're going to go from 100 HP down to 25. And for the HP lost, you get times 1.25% weapon damage. So I lost 75 HP, which means I'm gonna get 75, 14, like close to 80% weapon damage on the gold of this. I had to sacrifice a bunch of HP, and I get 80% weapon damage bonus for it. But if I just come up here to firepower, the gold on this is just straight up 120% weapon damage. I didn't have to sacrifice anything for that. It doesn't seem like a good trade-off. And that's just for that one shot. This isn't even a bonus that lasts for a little while after you do the shot. It's just for that one singular shot. So comparing Bloodshot to other damage increases here, I don't think it's very good. I think these numbers should be heavily tweaked. Make that like a ×5, because if I'm losing 75% of my HP to get extra damage here, that's very risky. Reward my risk. A pretty easy combo to point out is Fair Trade plus Copper Imprinting. Fair Trade is one that you can get early on as a normal, where basically you get extra secondary skill use limit. So if you're trying to get a really big amount of capacity for your secondary skill, it's good for that. But also you get copper for every time you use a secondary. Then later on, when you get Copper Imprinting, because it's not a normal die, you will be able to convert your copper into damage for your secondary skill use. This one is okay. I feel like it's another example of the juice not being worth the squeeze, because the damage that you get out of this can be very good, but only if you're sitting at a lot of money. But there's a lot of things in this game that suck up your money. For example, if you ever get Extravagant Consumption, the damage bonus that you get from that will be more consistent than this will, and it will totally, like, destroy your Copper Imprinting damage bonus. You would still have a pretty good reason to use Fair Trade to keep your copper up, to keep your Extravagant Consumption going, but But Riches Privileges basically does the same thing. It gives you extra damage per money held. So if you were to do that, these combined together would be really strong, but you're also going to have to worry about like not losing your money from other sources, not spending it too much, rolling on your weapons, rolling for scrolls, there's several ways to lose money, and so it can kind of suck. But what you'll find is that if you want to make this work, you're probably also going to need to take the bounty blessing. You're also going to need to take bounty magic to keep your copper going up higher. So there's a lot that goes into it. It can be fun to do a money build. There are ways to make it work, but again, why do that when you can just skill boost and make it even stronger? Or if you're spamming secondary skills to keep these stacks up, you might as well take Celestial Broken for the damage on that too. A lot of people overlook the power of building into elemental damage because they don't realize how it's a multiplier on top of other multipliers. If you're doing a weapon damage run, you can get a lot of damage out of just pure weapon damage. You can get it out of your crit X, and you can get it out of your lucky shot. But don't discount the fact that you can also get it from elemental damage. If you take the numbers 1 through 10 and multiply them from the lowest versus the highest, you'll notice that the closer you are to the middle, the higher the number. 1 times 10 is 10. 2 times 9 is 18. That's more than the 10. 3 times 8 is 24. Well, that's more than 18. 4 times 7 is 28. It's more than the 24. And then once you get to the middle with like 5 times 6, you get 30, which is the highest out of all of those. Instead of focusing all entirely on your crit bonus, making sure you have a high crit and then adding in a whole lot of lucky shot in there, then adding in some weapon damage bonus, and then if you have an elemental weapon, adding in elemental damage, you're going to be able to reach higher highs than you would have if you just focused solely on one aspect there. I say all of that because I feel like people aren't taking advantage of these sort of mastery die, where if you end up with like a demon lore, well, you have every reason to want to get increased fire rate, increased crit. You're going to want to increase your magazine because with the extended magazine die, you won't have to reload, so you can keep the demon lore bonuses going. And you want to get your lucky shot. You want to get crit, weapon damage, extended magazine, lucky shot. But the demon lore is always fire, so you would want to also get elemental damage increases on there because it is another multiplier for multiplying your multiples. You're multing your mult. It's like Balatro. You can't just have chips and mult. You need to have chips, mult, and multers. You gotta have that in there, otherwise you're gonna bust on the boss blind. Anyway, don't discount these. Simply because you can get way more damage if you have an element and you start increasing elemental damage. Okay, let me give you a big update on Arcane Box. In my first video on the season, I said I feel like this could have potential, but I used it in one run and I didn't get anything out of it. Since then, there have been multiple times to use this, and yes, it does live up to the hype. It is fantastic. Clearly, the red version is way better than everything else because not only are you getting better drop chances for scrolls off of everything, but it's also the enhanced version. So getting a red arcane box early on, if you have the possibility through either your fortune cards or just random luck with drops on things to get a red arcane box, almost always worth it to have that baby on there because you'll be getting so many enhanced scrolls over the course of your run. I'm not usually one that goes deep into endless mode or boundless dreams, so I don't usually care to stack up as many scrolls as possible. So I haven't been like laser focused on this, but if you're the kind of person that loads up Gunfire Reborn, you do one run a night where you go into Boundless Dream, you do a couple of loops before you close it out. With this, you could get every single scroll in the game by like your second loop. It's just ridiculous the number of scrolls you're gonna get, and at the red level, they'll all be enhanced too. It's disgusting. If you are in that mindset of wanting to get loaded up with every scroll in the game, it is hard to pass this up. I mean, even outside of that, it's hard to pass up just because scrolls are good. Getting more scrolls is good. So, Crystal Shield is the GOAT. I don't care what people say. I play on Reincarnation level 10 Lone Wolf 4 all the time, so I have to deal with like lots of enemies and some pretty rough situations, and Crystal Shield is the GOAT. Not only is it good for defense because you get that stack of Crystal Shield every few seconds, and that'll block damage raw. Like, it doesn't matter how much damage it is, it blocks it. But if you are at max stacks and you would get another tick of it, you get bonus damage. On top of that, you can have 2 of these equipped. So you can have 2 Crystal Shields giving you so much damage blocking, but if you're good at not getting hit, it still converts into extra damage for you. You still get a bonus on your offense too. So Crystal Shield is so hard for me not to take on every single run. Even at the normal level, sure, it takes a long time to get those shields, but being able to stop a run-ending amount of damage from a bad situation, like getting cornered against a white shark that like pulled you in with the chain, any number of things, a boss just hitting you, the Act 1 boss, Lu Wu. If you have Crystal Shield, you could just ignore most of the mechanics of that fight, run right up to his face and just shoot him in the face until he dies. I've also figured out a way to AI manipulate him. I'll probably make a video about that, but for now, Crystal Shield this season, one of the GOATs, hard to pass up, good in almost every situation, love it. Now, I can't think of anything else to talk about. Thank you for listening to me ramble. I've had so much fun with Fortune's Roll. You can see up here, I'm like 237 season level on this. I've burned through so much of my spiritual jade in order to test things out. It's been a lot of fun. I look forward to the next season. I look forward to all the new things out there. If you have your own builds that you've had a great time with, please leave them down in the comments. I don't need a reason to play this game, but whenever other people post on the subreddit, or I happen to see in the comments when someone says that they did a certain build type, it makes me want to go out and play it. So let me know what you all have been up to this season, and we'll look forward to the next one. Probably won't have another video until next year, so I'll see you in 2026, and until I do, remember to take care of yourselves and take care of those around you. Bye-bye.